We are talking about investment. We are talking about opportunities. We are talking way to have a world that is more fair thanks to the distributional approach of renewables.
Hello, this is the Weekly Tradecast, a podcast brought to you by UN Trade and Development. I'm Sarah Toms. We're exploring how major events are shaping trade and development and how that affects billions of people around the world. This week, after the COP29 Global Climate Summit, we're looking at renewable energy and why trade, aid and investment policies need a rethink to better support development and a greener future. With the global population growing, fossil fuels running out and our planet getting hotter as emissions rise, there's an urgent need to harness other kinds of energy. Renewable sources from the power of the sun, the wind and the oceans can boost energy supplies in a cleaner way and support economies and people. To get there, big changes need to happen. A new report by UN Trade and Development says trade in solar and wind technologies is booming, but that the expansion must be faster, smoother, cheaper, and more universal. Without investment and support from rich countries, developing nations may be sidelined, even though they could deliver and enjoy major benefits in the transition to cleaner electricity. For more, joining us from Baku is special guest Francesco La Camera, Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, who has more than 30 years of experience in the fields of climate, sustainability, and international cooperation. I'll also be talking to Carlos Razo from the technical team at the UN Global Crisis Response Group that produced the report. But first to Francesco, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here today. A global target to triple renewable energy by 2030 was adopted at last year's COP to limit rising temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. How are we doing? Are we on track? And what's the current pace of progress, Francesco?
First, the energy transition is in place, and we are moving towards a new energy system based on renewables, complemented by hydrogen, mainly green hydrogen, and the sustainable use of biomass. So the trend and direction of travel is clear from our monitoring. At the same time, our monitoring show that the progress, so the transformation, is too slow and not at sufficient scale to be in a trajectory consistent with the achievement of Paris Agreement goal. So what we are lacking is the speed and the scale of this transformation. So last year, we performed less than half of what is needed. So this gives the sense of the urgency to change gear and course correct to put the ship in track.
To Carlos now for a little bit more about the main findings of the Powering Trade report. Carlos, what is actually at stake for developing countries and how can they turn energy transition targets into real investments, add this extra value and actually enjoy benefits for themselves? Because it does sound like there are many challenges.
Yes, there are, but there are indeed many opportunities. But what is at stake for developing countries is very important. First of all, renewable energies are crucial to prosperity or economic prosperity from the CO2 emissions that produce the world global warming. And that's urgent. And therefore, we need renewable energy. But we also need renewable energy to address energy poverty in the world. Right now, there are around 680 million people around the world that live without electricity. So this is many more people than the population of the European Union. Imagine how the European Union will look today without electricity. And that image is what is at stake for many of these people. So renewable energy is an opportunity to bring electricity to these poor urban communities that live away from the grid and therefore reduce their poverty and enhance their development opportunities. And the third point, which is also important, is that renewable energy is opening new industries and opportunities for developing countries. And they can also develop their skills to penetrate these industries and produce and export goods on these areas so that they can increase their revenues and industrial capabilities.
So from what you've said, Francesco, there's some momentum. How do you see it, and what do we need to do to make this transition go faster and smoother?
So we, as Arena, we are insisting on this narrative. So we think that the change are affected, the speed and the scale of the change are affected by some structural barriers. In our point of view, the first of these barriers is the infrastructure. We have a grid system, we have port, we have infrastructure that have been built to sustain a centralized energy system based on fossil fuel. This infrastructure is not ready to support the more variable source of energy that are the renewables. So we need a grid network that is more interconnected, that is more flexible, and is more balanced. We need a port that can trade ammonia and hydrogen. We need infrastructure that's able to serve on this end. So the first barrier is the infrastructure, the logistic in some way. And we think that we have to associate, when we talk about the multilateral financial institutions, the idea of the development with the idea of the building of the new energy system, and so the infrastructure that may support it. The second barrier is the legal environment. We are still subsidizing fossil fuel. The trade tariff are favorable still to fossil fuel, not to renewables. We have the market that is designed for fossil fuel based in the short term, fixing price to the marginal cost. We need long-term contract. So we need a different way to design the market. The third barrier is on the capacity. This distributive system is much better, ensure more resilience, more energy security, but at the same time, it's a little bit less easy to manage than a centralized energy system. So we need to strengthen the capacity of the institution to deal with these new management tasks. And also we need new professionals, because the professionals were linked to the old system, and we need to reskill and retrain all the employees, all the workers that are transit from the old fossil fuel jobs to the new renewable energy and clean energy jobs.
It's a long list, isn't it? Are we able to get there in time?
The challenge is enormous, because we have come too late to start working seriously in fighting climate change, but we have no other chance. There is no option B.
So, Carlos, if we hope to achieve these climate and development goals by 2030, or at all, how do energy policies, strategies and actions need to change at all the various levels?
I think something we've seen is that we need to review trade policy in the context of climate change and expansion of renewable energy technologies. What we've seen is that trade policy, that is the tariffs or regulations that regulate trade and provide incentives for countries to import or export certain goods, need to be adjusted. Let me give you two examples. For example, in Africa, the tariffs on the intermediate goods that are needed to produce renewable energy technologies are relatively high, and they are double the level of tariffs faced in intra-regional trade in Asia. So that's one of the barriers. But also, if you move to other type of barriers, is border cost in Latin America and Africa for regional firms are up to 4 times higher the cost faced by firms outside the region. That limits intra-regional trade, and that limits the opportunities of countries to develop these industries and the opportunities for South-South cooperation and South-South trade.
Now, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the image we all have of trade is that it's responsible for a lot of pollution. And yet you're telling me that it is actually a tool that can be used to help further renewable energy.
Yes, that's right. And that's something often overlooked. We might look at all the cost or pollution that trade entails, but we forget that trade is also this powerful tool to move goods across the world from where they are produced to where they are needed. And in Africa, they are sorely needed, particularly for renewable energy.
Francesco, cost is the big issue because the upfront spending to shift to renewables can be high. So how can we encourage investment to flow beyond developed countries and also make financing more affordable for developing countries so they can see the benefits too?
So first of all, we cannot use the term cost. This is a kind of legend that is built on the idea that without renewables, there are no costs. The costs are always there, also to keep in life the old system. So what we do for renewables and clean energy is not a cost, it's an investment, because this is an investment that provides returns, provide more GDP, more jobs, more clean environment than the old system. So we are talking about investment. I think that's also the language that we use have to take into account that we are talking about opportunities. We are talking way to have a world that is more fair thanks to the distributional approach of renewables. So I think this is important to be said. Concerning the investment in the developed country, this is associated with this idea that we have that first comes the infrastructure. We think that in Africa, Southeast Asia, for having more investment to come, we need to have an engagement of the multilateral financial institutions, multilateral development institutions to build or to strengthen the infrastructure. I always put this example. After the Second World War, without the loans coming from the United States and with the Marshall Plan, today we are not having 4 European countries in the G7. So it's very important that we have a serious idea on how to support Africa, because with the infrastructure come the development, from development come demand and the possibility for paying the electricity. And so this means that opportunity for the private sector to come and invest.
And what are your hopes for the future, Francesco, just to end on?
The question is not a question of hopes. The question is that we have to do it, because the challenge is a challenge for the planet, and we cannot fail. So it's a question not having a hope or not. It's the question that all of us, we have to feel engaged in this enormous task for the wealth of our people, for the wealth of the planet.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Francesco. That was special guest Francesco La Camera, Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency. And thank you to Carlos Razo with the UN Global Crisis Response Group, who are this week's guests. Tune into the weekly Tradecast next week and every week for more insights on the most pressing issues around the world of trade and development. There's even more on our website, unctad.org. I'm Sarah Toms in Geneva. Goodbye for now.